Okay, Dr. PK here. I'm going to be going over chapters 3 and 4 of The Catch in the Rye. And so I'm probably going to go a little bit faster through these and not go as close to page by page as we have been in the past. But I do want to point out this very beginning of chapter 3, it's interesting. He says he's the most terrific liar you've ever met. And so if you look at the themes right here on the right-hand side, it'll be important for you to know that a lot of things that come up in this play, Holden calling people phony, when he kind of hides his true feelings, these are all examples of appearance versus reality. And so at the beginning of this chapter, he admits he's the most terrific liar. And what's interesting is that he is actually the narrator of this story. And so he's telling us this story, and he's admitting that he's perhaps an unreliable narrator. Can we trust him as he's telling us this story, right? So very, very much from the very first page, when he says, if you really want to know about it, you probably want to know what my lousy childhood is like and all this David Copperfield kind of crap. So he goes into this whole thing like, I'm going to tell you about my life, but then on chapter 3, he says, I can kind of lie. I tell lies. And so we don't know if we can trust him, but we do know that it plays into this theme of appearance versus reality. And so the next couple of chapters, we're going to start to get a sense of where he's at with this prep school, why he's unhappy being there. You're going to meet some people, and when you meet these people, one of the things you're going to want to notice is one of them is kind of fake. He's going to be called Yearbook Good Looking. He's going to be called a Secret Slob, and the other guy is kind of a real dude that has pimples and has like bad habits, has mossy looking teeth. And so what you're going to see is that it plays into this conformity, nonconformity, and the alienation from worlds theme as well. And so let's start with that. So in these two chapters, you're going to meet both his roommate, who's kind of this handsome yearbook looking guy, and you're going to meet this guy that's kind of like a next door neighbor in this dorm room situation. Ackley Kid is what Holden calls him. So on the right hand side, and Ackley Kid is this kid that's kind of a real, kind of like average, maybe even geeky looking character. Holden complains about his bathroom habits. He complains about how the kid clips his nails all over the place and has mossy looking teeth. And so Holden doesn't think that this kid is really like, in some ways, like good looking, right? He's not your classic handsome guy, which is going to contrast. So when we start talking about good writing, good compelling storytelling has contrasting characters. Ackley Kid is going to contrast with this other guy, right? Ward Stradlater, who's roommates with Holden and we meet Ward, and you're going to see that Ward is this yearbook handsome, and Holden's a little bit jealous of him. At the same time, he's also a little bit envious and almost wanting to be a little bit more like Ward, right? And because he's the type of guy that when parents see him in the yearbook, they fawn over him. He's the type of guy that goes on multiple dates with many different girls, right? So in some ways, Holden somewhat envies him. So these contrasting characters kind of play a role in shaping, coming back to our notion of like, what do we accept, appearance versus reality? Also, what do we accept? What do we want to be like? And when do we express our true selves? So it really kind of plays into these different themes. Okay. We also see that in these chapters, you can see he gets really fascinated by this hat that he found. It's a hunting hat. So it's this red hunting hat. And so when we look at this red hunting hat, you're going to see that Holden calls it actually his people shooting hat. And so he's telling this to Ackley, and he tells him he's really excited how he got this hunting hat. But he says, it's my people shooting hat. This also kind of plays into the theme of appearance versus reality. Holden maybe kind of hides himself in this hat, and he says he likes to turn it around and wear it backwards, which also gets at the conformity and nonconformity theme. It's this idea that he thinks his hat's really kind of sensational looking, but do other people think it's really good looking, right? But Holden's very proud of it. And we see that Holden doesn't hunt down people and shoot them physically, like with a gun or a weapon. He shoots them down with his words. And so you see that a lot with this chapter where he's really kind of roasting Ackley Kid, right? So first of all, his name is Ackley, but Holden likes to call him Ackley Kid. Again, remember Old Spencer, Ackley Kid. And Holden just kind of like talks trash about him, but yet he's the one kid that maybe is seemingly closer to being like Holden, right? The guy that roomed next to him. Um, and so Holden makes fun of him a lot and talks a lot about the just his bad habits. Um, but at the same time, again, he's a lot more like Holden than maybe Ward Stradler is. But you see, and throughout this text, you're going to see, and you want to pay attention to how Holden kind of shoots people down with his words, right? So I think a saying from 10 years ago, kids would always say, people were why are you gunning on me, or something like that. And I think it was a term of saying, like, why are you shooting him down, right? Why are you roasting me? And whatever term you might use as a teenager today to describe insulting other people, that's what kind of Holden does when he puts on this hunting hat. He cuts people down with his words. All right. And we also see that Holden kind of reflects on his past a little bit. And, oh, actually, before we even get to that, it brings us to this notion of cool. Like, Ward Stradlater is kind of like the cool kid. So going back to our cool kid song, Ward is the kid that that girls, the guy that girls might like, the guy that parents might be like, oh wow, he's what a handsome young man, right? And so he's like the cool kid, and he's Holden's roommate. So we meet Ward Stradlater in these chapters. And so that goes out to the conformity versus nonconformity theme. So what is cool? How do we define that? How do we, if something's not cool, do we put it in a box and make it feel unaccepted? Or do we accept all kinds of people, right? So that gives alienation versus acceptance theme as well. All right, so yearbook handsome. How do we define handsome? In the last chapter, we also saw that his old teacher, remember, said that life is a game in which we play by the rules. And again, are there these rules to life of how people should dress, how people should behave, how people should act, how people should talk? And Holden really kind of doesn't want to also necessarily follow those rules. And it's not clear yet on whether he's avoiding those rules because he can't do them, or whether he's outright rejecting them because he feels like they are he's rebelling against them, right? In his nonconformist kind of way. All right. In this chapter, and we also see kind of a mention of some Holden's past, right? Ward is going on a date. Remember, he's a sexy bastard, as Holden calls him, and I can find so this Stradlater is his name, but Holden actually calls him a sexy bastard, just kind of like reflecting on the fact that everybody else thinks that Ward is this really good looking guy. And Ward Stradlater is going on a date with somebody that Holden used to know by the name of Jane Gallagher. And in fact, what's interesting is Ward can't even get her name right. And because Ward Stradlater apparently probably goes out with a lot of different girls. And he doesn't necessarily know her name, but Holden does. And so as soon as Holden hears her name, he starts thinking about the past and the time that he and Jane used to play checkers together, and she liked to keep her kings in the back row. And when he starts to think about that, it really plays to our theme of innocence of childhood, like going back to the past. Holden's past was probably more pleasant for him, and we're going to learn why in the next couple chapters. But his past was a good time for him. He had this friend Jane that was next door neighbor. You're going to see that his brother dies, and Holden is dealing with the trauma and the loss of his brother. And how do you handle that in a world where, as you get older and move through these different worlds, some of the people get meaner, some of the people get pushed out and alienated, and so how do you cope with things as you grow up and get older in the world? And so that's kind of what his struggle is. And Jane represents this person from his past, right? This innocence of childhood as he's moving through these worlds where he now feels a little bit more alienated as he goes along. And so really that's what you're looking for in the next couple of chapters, in chapters 3 and 4. You should be paying attention to that, and really pay attention to his description and his kindness when he talks about his past. You'll notice that he doesn't wear his people shooting hat when he's talking about the past. When he talks about Jane, when he talks about his brother, he's much nicer when he talks about them. And so it goes back to the innocence of childhood. These are people that he wants to protect. Okay. All right. And that's the summary, kind of a verbal annotation of chapters 3 and 4. This has been Dr. PK, and this has been Lessons or Literature. This has been Literature in 10 Minutes.